Hi, everyone. Barry McGuire here for Barry McGuire's Creative Real Estate Education Series. It's the Monday main event. We're live at 5. Before I say that, just for folks who have never seen me before, I'm Barry McGuire. I'm a real estate lawyer. I teach courses on creative real estate investing. I'm a practicing real estate lawyer in Edmonton, Alberta. And every Monday we get together and talk about things related to creative real estate. So that's real estate other than long-term buy and hold, whatever is outside that very common category of real estate. My wife Dawn and I put on what we call focus workshops, which are live events, typically now that we're finished with COVID, where we get folks together in a room. And we did our last one May 7th and 8th in Calgary of this year, where we did what we call our rapid cash program, talking about 6 creative real estate strategies and how they work and how people can profit from them on a quicker cash basis than long-term buy and hold brains. And on this Monday main event, we bring in various experts in various areas. They talk about tax, they talk about insurance, they talk about mortgages, they talk about credit and how you analyze that. And all of those things as how they relate to creative real estate. So today we are pleased to have with us Julie Vincent, who is a very professional photographer. And Julie's going to talk to us about what she does in real estate as a photographer. And I'm very interested to hear about this. Just going to give you a little bit of her bio here. So this is Julie's career. She didn't just pick this up yesterday. It's what she does for a living on the real estate side, residential, commercial, and she photographs events, and she's done well-received exhibits, including one called Tripping the Streets Fantastic, which is an international street photography project that features 5 major cities where Julie traveled. I think in the summers for 5 years, took pictures of the streets in 5 major cities. This project has been exhibited in Calgary for 6 years. They also photographed, she and her husband, Jason Lawrence, who's our audio guy, have photographed the Indian Relay through southern Alberta and into the U.S. I would like to see that. Exhibited in Calgary 5 times between 2019 and 2021. And at the Canadian Embassy in Tokyo right now. And she's working on a new exhibit called A Uniform of Many Colors, which will be at the Founders Gallery at the museums this weekend. So it's opening up. She and Jason have been the photography lead for Global Fest for 13 years. And Julie's the key photographer for military museums in Calgary, as well as Foothill Country Hospice's annual Rally for Hospice and Gala. U of C book publications on Canadian military archives, advertising and marketing for the museums, and archival photography for Founders Gallery exhibits, and more, and more, and more. So I'm guessing Julie isn't using one of those old Kodaks that my mom had, where you rolled the film into it and there was one lever that you pressed. Anyway, let's bring on Julie along with Wayne Hillier, who's going to participate today. And we're going to have a discussion with Julie about. Hi, Julie.
Hello.
And Wayne, thanks for running the show as you always do. Much appreciated.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Going good, I think.
Yeah.
I'm excited about this. So, Julie, we often have kind of drier things on, like people talking about tax and insurance, and I yak about problems people have. So this is, I think, more on the joyful side, but in a way that could really, really help people. So that is an amazing bio that you have here. And it says that you're lifelong. And as I said, you've been doing this for a while. I mean, everyone probably goes to high school and then does something else. Tell us how you got to photography and to being a full-time photographer, which I expect is tougher to do than people think.
Yeah, yes, to that last point. I was really unpopular in high school. So as a result of being unpopular, I, of course, you gravitate to other people who are unpopular, and those happen to be group of people that were in camera club, which was cool because we could escape to this dark room in the middle of the day. Anyway, so I became quite interested. I've always been interested in photography, but being part of that camera club at high school, I went to Wisewood in Calgary, and it was just really cool being in the dark room, literally a dark room, when you turn the lights out and you had a red light and the whole thing. And then when I graduated, my dad gave me a camera and said, go see the world. And I did. I went and took this little Nikon. I think it was an FE or something. I've lost it, unfortunately, that camera. But and the first place that I went with that camera was probably Montreal, when I moved to Montreal when I was after high school. And then I went to London, I went to school in London for a little while and, took it with me. And I remember the day that I got this image, because I was a hobbyist and I loved the medium, but I had not considered myself a photographer at all at that time. And I was walking across I think it was a Battersea Bridge in London, and I happened to look off the edge of the bridge, and there was a fella asleep on a bench down there, and there were just these grand old oaks that cover the side of the river there, the Thames. And it just was, when I saw the image, I'm like, oh, I know now that this is what I want to do. And I wasn't able to do it as a professional for, obviously a long time. I have 3 kids and there's lots of complicated stuff. But I think, I don't know, maybe 16 years ago, just when MLS was coming online and, starting to be a thing, I saw a photograph online of a basement in a house in Haysboro. So anybody from Calgary will know this is, one of these areas like Otwell and Edmonton. It's an older area. And, one of those bowling alley basements with paneling on the side. And they had a treadmill in the middle of this room. And the treadmill had the homeowner's skivvies on it, like their underwear. And whoever shot it, I assume the realtor at that point, shot through the treadmill and, down the length of this thing and put it on MLS. And I went, I can do a better job than that, not knowing anything. So I kind of jumped in.
Pretty low bar.
Well, yeah, and that's true, because there weren't any photographers really in Calgary at that point. There was a guy called Dustin Mifflin who had Open to View at that time. He had come from Australia and he's gone back to Australia. And then there was another fella, and I'm so sorry, I don't remember his name, but he had Spinnaker Real Estate Photography, and he's since retired. So I'm by default now the longest running photographer in Calgary, but by default, because those 2 fellas are out of the market. And then around the same time, I think in 2009 maybe, there was this thing called YYC for Haiti, which was a fundraiser for when the earthquakes happened in Haiti. And I met a fella there who was shooting for Architecture magazine. We had a conversation, and I called him at one point, not knowing him really. And I said, hey, I'd love to start doing this. I need some, can I take you for coffee? And he said, no, I'm too busy. He's a Dutch fella. He's quite dour. He's lovely, but he's very dour. And no, I'm too busy. You have to come with me tonight. I'm shooting this mansion over in Aspen, I think, in Calgary. Just come. And he downloaded absolutely everything to me about what he did. And then he said, and you have to take my clients because I'm moving back to Holland.
Oh.
So that's basically, I got shoveled. And his name's John Carnegie, his name is, and he was such a pro. And, so I've obviously developed my own style, but there you go. That's how it happened. And I've been doing it ever since. And I love it. It's really fun.
You know what, Wayne, as I listen to this, I'm thinking anybody who could get close to Julie and just sort of stick around, like, things happen to you. People talk to you, stuff happens, and it leads on all these wonderful paths. I mean, the book that you took to New York.
Oh, that was so crazy.
The picture in the Thames, the guys in Calgary, John, I mean.
Yeah. I should say, I come from a journalism background, and I'm, as you've already ascertained, I'm sure I'm quite a chatty person in certain situations. And, the combination of me being curious and having journalism in my background, I do tend to ask people questions, like with your guitars, Wayne, so sometimes that provokes these connections and, meeting people that, it does lead to things. So
chatty people make great guests.
It's the chatty part. This is something that we've observed as a creative real estate investing group is that if you just have a chance to talk to people and you're anywhere as near presentable and friendly, it doesn't take very long before people will tell you everything. There's almost nothing that's offside, in the context of what you might be working with them on. So yeah, being chatty and just being friendly is a great tool, not only for you, but it's been for our group.
Yeah.
Wayne is particularly chatty, and I think that serves him well, as opposed to his wife Gabby, who's a bit more reticent, I would say.
Ironically, eh?
Yeah, ironically, indeed. All right. Well, with that background and that introduction to photography, not to real estate photography is what I was trying to say. Tell us a bit about how your development as a photographer with an eye on the residential and commercial side changed, from when you start. I mean, John was nice enough to show you a few things and, downloaded, as you say, everything he knew. Yeah. But tell us, how it's all developed to get to the point where you are today. And then I want to get into the things that you look for and the what's and the whys of where you are in your photography business today. But how did it start out for you, and how did it change over time?
Well, one thing that I teach. Jason obviously doesn't love teaching, but occasionally I do teach, people about photography. And one of the things that I say to them, because of my experience shooting with Chris and then with Jason, is that our vision is so driven by our own experiences and, how our age and where we live and all that stuff. So Jason and I will often shoot shoulder to shoulder. People who don't know Jason, you probably do know Jason, your sound guy. He's really tall and I'm not. Yeah. So when we shoot together, we might be shoulder to shoulder, but you would never know that because our vision generally, how we see the world, how we interpret story. Jason's much more technical as a shooter than I am, and I'm very into the story. So I'll often use images that are not technically perfect, not in real estate, but with events and things. And Jason is very driven by a technically perfect shot. So we will often bounce off each other to we can really pull out great stuff between the two of us because I'm looking for the story in his work and he's looking for the technical quality in mine. So it's a good partnership that way. Where it relates to real estate, and John Carnegie, he had a very distinctive style, which was driven, of course, by his own experience and abilities and his camera and what his clients wanted. And by Architecture magazine itself, that's a magazine and they have parameters that they need to have satisfied. So I basically took what he gave me and, made it my own. And a lot of things have changed too, of course, in that time. The quality of our editing programs is much different. I've upgraded my camera twice now since I started shooting. And I've developed, some proprietary editing presets in my own software that are, make things look beautiful. And I've changed my process. John was using what's called a 9-shot HDR. I'll explain that later on what HDR is, but I use a 5-shot HDR, which is plenty to get, good room light. I don't go into homes with big banks of lights. That's really difficult for homeowners. Yeah. And coming back to me being interested in people, I'd rather shoot in a way that lets me talk to my homeowners at the same time as I'm working, and having a big banks of lights and that stuff doesn't, so my process is different. And then one of the things that I did, and I say this to photographers generally, but specifically people that are shooting buildings, architecture, sort of cityscapes, is learn how to draw in perspective. 1 and 2 point perspective is really important because we have to be able to see what we're looking at and where we're inside homes. And I have a slideshow that I may bring in here, but when you're in a home or a listing of any type, if you can't see the perspective in that home, you're going to end up with these walls that are doing this and, wonky. So I did sit down. It didn't take me long. It was super interesting to learn how to do that. But I learned how to draw with a pencil and a piece of paper in perspective so that when I am in a home now, I can see where the lines are going.
Right. Okay.
It's cool. So, two-point perspective in particular, I super enjoy that. It's such a neat process.
Isn't that interesting? So you needed to get the paper and the pen and pencil out and
Yeah.
draw it in order to go, okay, now why did you need to do that instead of just being able to see it in the, is it because it doesn't pop out at you when you're in a room looking to?
It does, but I think being able to draw in perspective where you're literally putting a pencil on a piece of paper and drawing those lines, that
Yeah.
it forces you to recognize what perspective is and what the horizon is and what straight is and what those angles are, and maintaining, how the perspective in a place or outdoors will shift if you move yourself. That
Okay.
I don't know whether everybody needs to do that, but for me, it
Good.
just gave me a heightened ability to see what I was looking at in a room. And
Mhm.
I guess as a sidebar, I'm such a nerd for real estate. You probably know this, Barry, you know this.
Yes.
I mean, you may not, but I'm really nerdy for this stuff, and I always have been since I was 15 years old. So for me, it's important to do a great job. And I often will see photographers who I know can't see what they're looking at. You guys will know that,
Yeah.
sometimes you look at stuff on MLS and it's like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we know that.
Literally just looked at one today, and I love the pictures where in the background you can see the seller like this,
Unreal.
just like he's hanging out in the back.
Yeah.
Or they took it with their phone. You could see them in the mirror and the reflection. I'm like, come on.
I have one saved somewhere, and I know I'm not going to name this person because I know who it is, but it was a realtor who shot the place themselves, and they kind of shot into the bathroom, and the house wasn't occupied, obviously, but they were in there in I don't know what you call this, a gilet, that's like sleeveless little waistcoat thing, and
Yeah.
all their body hair. So now I've identified this as a masculine person, and the flash on their camera replaced their head, so all you could see was this shoulder with this hair, and it was.
I mean, it makes sense if it's an accident, but then there's the process of uploading it, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
That
Like,
was
how do you my other favorite is this one, when you got a thumb in the corner of the picture.
Yeah.
You just like, come on.
That'd be me.
Yeah.
Because they're taking a picture like this.
Yeah, it's frustrating to see that, and I'll touch on this in a bit, but I don't know. And I know that's not everybody's drive. I know that there's what I call the $80 guy out there, and I'm not the $80 guy. And the reason I'm not the $80 guy is partially long-term experience, but partially because I am going to provide images no matter what the value of that listing is. If that's, a tiny little rental property, or if that's that place I shot out in Springbank that was at the time $4 million, the quality of the work that I'm going to provide is equal across that spectrum. And the reason I do that, and particularly for smaller value listings, and I'm going to say, like, first time buyers who are selling the first place they've owned, probably because of what economics we live in, younger buyers who are selling their first property, they got that property because mom and dad helped out with that mortgage. Yeah. And so I say to my realtors often, that has to be valuable to you. You have to do the same job for them as you do for other people, because that's your pipeline. You look great, your listing looks great, and mom and dad who funded that mortgage or partially funded that mortgage, they're watching. And if you don't give the value to that listing, mom and dad or whoever funded that listing is also going, oh, that person doesn't care. Mm-hmm. And that's not good for your pipeline.
Yeah. So that's, that's one perspective on why talent and doing a great job is important. And I mean, then there's the viewing, the buying public that looks at it as well, apart from that pipeline. So tell us about, Wayne, what do you got there?
Well, actually, I don't know what direction you were planning on going with this, but
I will turn that off. How about that?
Sure.
I hate when that happens.
We do have a question in regards to lighting, and I think that's a really good segue. Do you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Do you choose the time of day you take your interior property photos, or just work with what you have? For instance,
So,
evening is very dark in the winter, so the windows look dark, and in the summer, the light shining through is a bit of a challenge.
right. So yes, I do somewhat choose the time of day, and only in that especially this time of year where the sun is very high overhead, and particularly this time of year, I avoid like the plague anything between 11 and 1, because the sun is overhead and everybody's, oh, it's filled with light, it's filled with light. Well, also what it's filled with is a lot of harsh shadows. And that's tough to deal with, even regardless of process. It's easier for people who do bring in a bank of lights, but like I say, I don't work like that. So mid-year like this, I don't do that. The process I use, though, being an HDR process. So HDR stands for high dynamic range. And in order to get a high dynamic range image, you're making a composite of at least 3, and like John was doing, up to 9. So I shoot 5 images of the scene, and that by doing that, it takes in all of the light in that scene, whether that's really dark light or really bright light. And when that's combined in post-production, it's like if you were layering slide film, five layers of slide film. You get all of that range of light. So in answer to that question, I can really mitigate, late in the day, and I can take advantage actually of late in the day. I can have a well lit interior and still have beautiful, dark exteriors. I shot a house 3 weeks ago maybe, and the realtor asked me I should have charged him a premium. He asked me to come and shoot the house starting at 8:30 at night on a Saturday. And that kept me there until about 10 after 10 in order to get that twilight, which gives me beautifully lit interiors. And then I can see out their back. They have this huge picture window there, and it's on this beautiful backyard with these fairy lights all over the backyard. So, and that was also well lit because that five shot HDR grabs all those tones.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
So then, do you do any? Do you give your customers any coaching on preparing for you to show up? I mean, do you prep the space yourself, or do you tell them what you want them to do with it before you show up?
Yes, and yes to all of those questions. And the other thing that I also do is I liaise with the realtors I work with, or some of these people are landlords that I work with. I have a document, it's 1 page, and it says, here's how you can prepare your home for photography. And I get them to take out certain things. And certain things to me make sense. I don't want toilet paper. I don't want, what do you call it, your kitchen roll. I don't want that. I don't want garbage bins. I don't want little, kind of fabric rugs. I don't want any of that in the image, because who wants garbage? Nobody's buying your garbage. I don't want people to think about the homeowner using the loo. I don't want the potential buyer, potential renter to think about, oh, I have to clean this place. Mm-hmm. I want it to look like, where it's a listing that has furniture in it, I want it to look like somewhere that a buyer or a renter could go, they can imagine themselves living there. But also to balance that with, I don't want them to look at that photo and go, oh my goodness, that's somebody else's place. So yes, I send out this 1 page document to get people to prepare, take the garbage bins out of the shot, remove and if they don't, it's not a big deal. So this is another place that I kind of differ from a lot of other photographers, is I will go and I say to the homeowners, hey, is it okay if I move things around? And I do. I'll take the garbage bins out of there. I did that today when I was shooting. They had a garbage bin, beautiful, nice and clean, but right in the middle of their kitchen. Nobody wants to buy garbage, so out it goes. And yeah, I do liaise with my realtors a lot, especially if it's a new realtor. We kind of have a conversation, and I say, oh, I'll send you this thing, and just this will help your clients. And I always couch it in terms of, I want to help you. Like I want to come on as a partner with my realtors or landlords. I'm not to tell them how they're going to run their business life, but I want them to understand that I'm a partner. They can call me and say, what do I do? Or here's what this person's about, or this is what this seller's like. And yeah, by doing that, by providing that document, it's just an extra layer of help for the realtor or the landlord.
So a couple of things. any chance we could have a look at that one-page document? Donna was asking me. She might.
Oh, yeah. Let me see if I can just keep asking me questions, and I'll go and have a look here in my documents for.
You just send it along to Donna, and she will do. What are you doing with it, Donna? The great Donna has her own ideas. I don't question that.
I'll just find it here. So
It did lead me into a question that I had, something that she said, if you want. You had mentioned whether that be for a buyer or for a renter. Now, do you only do photography for MLS listings, or do you do also for rental property listings as well?
Yeah, I do rentals. I do what do you call those, like short-term, long-term? I've done actually long-term rentals and Airbnb. Sorry, I don't mean to give away a brand name here, but like long-term rentals like that and short-term rentals, I do that kind of work as well. I do commercial buildings, and I love what I do, but commercial buildings are really fun because a lot of times commercial buildings are real ugly. And I want to go in there and make that building look as attractive as possible, even if it's gross and there's oil on the floor and high beams and birds nesting up there.
Yeah.
I did one for some people you guys know, actually, Dominic Mandato. I did a place for him that's out in Alderside, and it's an extraordinary building, and it was so fun to shoot because it was just this big, massive place. So yeah, I do the gamut.
Do you think, because a lot of landlords, a lot of new investors are very cheap. You know what I mean? Like they had just enough money to get a down payment together. I got my first rental property, and everyone's like, hire a bookkeeper, get professional photos, do this, do this, this. You're like, whoa. I'm gonna manage this myself, and I don't have any extra money. But do you think it's worth it to get professional photos done as opposed to something off your iPhone?
Yes, because what do you want as a landlord or somebody who's going to flip a property? What's your goal? As a landlord, your goal is to attract a great renter who's going to treat that place like it's their own, and they're going to stay there for a while. Like if you can get that tenant who's there for 2 to 4 years or 10, and they always treat that place because they've seen that image or those images before they rent. They see this beautiful listing. And so two things happen. You're going to attract a much, sorry, I don't mean to be pejorative here, but you're going to attract a better quality of renter if you have beautiful images, as opposed to you've got the images with the toilet seat up and the garbage on the floor. That's a different market. And that's not necessarily a market that's going to give a crap about your listing or your rental. And where it comes to listing a property that you've spent whatever time and money renovating a property that you intend to flip, how much is that? I don't know how much is the average, sort of investment for flip, but say you've invested $30,000, which is very low end. You're going to cheap out now on photography after you've done all that work? That seems really counterproductive to me.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think it'd be hard to argue with those last comments of yours or any comments that you've made. Do you have any sense of the value that you bring to assisting somebody with prepping their place? So, I mean, we've heard the why you do it the way you do it, and I'm guessing that you do an absolutely amazing job. But I mean, how do you determine whether or not hiring you to do that amazing job has the effect people want, which is a better presentation, better sales, higher price, better quality tenant? I mean, it's logical that it would, but is there anything else that you could add to that part?
Well, I shot this one place when I was brand new at this too. So, it's funny, you look back at your work and you're like, oh, that was really not great. But anyways, I shot this place for a realtor I think he's less busy than he was, but he was the guy in Calgary for a long time. And he called me up a couple days after I shot, maybe a week later. He called me up and he's like, I just want you to know that place sold. And I'm like, I'm glad. Thank you. I'm glad you let me know. And he goes, they didn't even come to town. They bought it sight unseen, which is to say all they saw was the photographs.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they never came to town. They were moving from Lethbridge. They saw the images online. They called them up. They bought the house, and they never saw it until they walked in the door. So that was a really, how do I say, a really formative moment.
Yeah.
Because you know, I was new to the industry at that point, but to have somebody call me up and tell me that was amazing. And the second time that happened, it was kind of funny. Another guy who's again quite a prolific guy in town, and he had me go shoot a really crappy little condo. It wasn't nice. I had to make the beds. I moved stuff around. I staged it with whatever stuff the guy had in there. You know, it looked nice when it was done. And the realtor called me when he got the photos and he says, "You sent me the wrong images." And I said, "No, I'm sure I've sent you the right images." And he goes, no, there's no way. That place looks so good. And I said, "Well, let me just check, because, you know, I want to make sure." And I verified and I said, "Yeah, that's definitely your listing," you know. And he goes, "Wow." He says, "I'm so spoiled because I can never use anybody else," because it was such a nice compliment. I've worked for him now for about 10 years, I think.
Yeah.
But,
well, there you go. I mean, those are, where people buying off images is reasonably common now. I mean,
yeah.
COVID, it was quite uncommon before. So I think when you had those folks from Lethbridge buy, I don't think that was happening very much. So it must have been really struck them when they saw.
Yeah, I think the statistic at that point, because I was still, you know, MLS was pretty new to the online environment. So I think at that time, the statistic was about 80% of people would go online and, you know, have a look at a place before they would go out to see it. And now I don't know if there's anybody who doesn't, you know, start their search on MLS. There's, you know, the other platforms that are out there. So it really matters to have a good looking listing. And I think too, again, I say this to these people that I work with all the time, your reputation is your bottom line trading card. And if you always are, if everything you sell or list or lease or whatever always looks great, like if it's consistently gorgeous, that says a lot about who you are as a landlord, who you are as a realtor, who you are as somebody that's, you know, renovating for sale. Sure. You know, if you have this inconsistency where all these low value listings or these small places that I have for rent don't get that, you know, they're not shown in that same light, then that leaves people, it's kind of an opening to say, like, can I rely on this person? Yeah. So I think the reputation piece is so important.
It is. And I mean, for anybody who's doing any amount of real estate, that's, you want to, you know, have that reputation. You want people to see that it's a listing from this person. They go, man, I got to look at that right away.
Yeah.
Those listings fly off the shelf. I got to be right in there because it's fabulous.
Yeah. And when you ask me about the money, so I guess my thing is, you know, we all know the difference between going to a reputable seller and, you know, maybe the low value retailer, and the difference in the quality of that thing. So yes, or whatever it is you're buying. So yes, you can get the $80 guy, but if you get the $80 guy and you get those images and they're not great, and frankly, I don't know how those people are sustaining their businesses, because I actually did a little breakdown a couple of years ago of, I was working with the $89 shoot. And in order for that person to make a subsistence wage before paying for gas, before paying for, you know, looking after their gear, all that kind of stuff, in order for them to make a subsistence wage, they would have to shoot 6 listings a week, 52 weeks of the year, every year. And that would give them about $24,000 a year. And then they're still paying rent and they're still paying gas. So, and in order to get $50,000 a year, which is, you know, I can live on that. I'm an older person with no mortgage, but if, you know, $50,000 a year requires somebody to be shooting 12 listings a week at $89. So you can't do quality. There's no way you can do quality, because between driving, you know, you're working 6 days a week doing 2 listings a day, driving, and, you know, your post-production, everything's going to suffer. So, and if you have to then call somebody else, me, for instance, I'm not the only great photographer. Sorry, I don't mean to brag about myself like that, but I'm not the only quality photographer in this city. There's a group of people in this city that are really good. And in Calgary, we're about 6,000 realtors, so there's lots of work. Yeah. It's feast here, it's not famine. And it's always been feast, even in the low times. So, but if you're paying for the $89 guy, the photos are crappy, your homeowner's not happy, okay, you've dished out for that money. Now you have to spend time getting me to come out and you're going to pay me. It's a business expense. I know it's a lot of money off the front end, but at the end of the thing, you've got quality, you've got reputation, you've got beautiful looking listings, and you've got your tax write-off at the end of the year.
All of which will help sell at the best possible price, which
Exactly.
is what
Yeah.
people have to remember. I mean,
And then, if you've got a listing and now you're dropping your listing, so say you've got a listing that's sitting on the market for however long, and you drop the price by $10,000, the cost in commission to that listing realtor is more by dropping that listing by $10,000 than it is to hire me right at the front end.
beginning, do it right the first time is what you're telling us.
I
Yeah.
think.
So Julie, for this whole, I don't know if it's quite a generation, but there's a good long stretch of years here where folks alive today have never seen a decent camera. It's always been the camera on their phone. That's the only camera they knew about. And so just give us a couple of words on the difference between phone cameras and the professional equipment you use.
Yeah. So phone cameras, modern phone cameras now, like your iPhone, whatever the latest iteration is, and the Samsung 22, whatever they are, excellent cameras. Excellent.
They
cameras.
really are.
They're really excellent, but they are limited in that they can't do an HDR. They can do an in-camera HDR, but they can't do an actual series of images to create an HDR. So yes, you can get pretty good images a lot of the time if you're shooting with an iPhone, but you're not going to get consistently great images. There's just no way, because you don't have the functionality that you will have with a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. You need something that gives you that ability to, shoot that multiples. And it's not even so much the camera, actually. It's a trope, I'm sorry, but we often say to people, you can spend $6,000 on a Wolf stove.
Yeah.
And if you can't cook, that stove isn't going to make you good at it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with gear. My go-to camera is a 7D2, which is we get these gearheads and they go, oh, it's an old camera and it's only a crop sensor, and they got all sorts of stuff. So it is an old camera. That camera actually is my personal camera is not this old, but that's like a 12-year-old camera. It is a crop sensor, which if you're talking to camera people, they're going to go, oh, that's terrible. You need to go to full frame. Well, here's the thing with the crop sensor. A full frame camera, the sensor inside it is 35 millimeter, which is the same as film. So remember old 35 millimeter film? That's literally how big that film was. A crop sensor camera is 1.6 that size, so it's smaller. But that gives me, with my lens, it gives me the multiplication factor of 1.6. So I have a 10-20 lens on my camera, and that, because I have a crop sensor, I get a better distance on my camera. So there's a lot of upsides to that. Anyway, sorry, that's very technical.
No.
The bottom line is you can get good images of a home with your iPhone or your good quality Samsungs, but you're never going to get consistency. And do what you do well. If you're a great realtor, you're a great landlord, you're a great flipper, do that. Like, do what you do well. You hire a great accountant. You hire Barry because he's a great lawyer. Hire a good photographer who's a competent photographer who's going to come in and do that job. And that's out of your head. You know that they come in, do their thing, and the next day you're going to get a pile of images that you're not going to have to worry about. You can upload them to wherever. And
now, do you do still images only, or do you also are you on the video side of things?
Sort of, yeah. Mostly what I do is still images, and I can do slideshows with those images. I have a gimbal, which is the thing that I can put my cell phone actually in and do video. So a lot of times I'll just go in and I'll just do a really quick video of usually it's realtors. Hi, my name is so-and-so. Welcome to whatever the address is. Come on in. And then I'll just do a quick fly around the house. And I do this at the front end, and they say, thanks for coming. Please give me a call. Here's how you reach me. Yeah. I don't do that often because I haven't worked a lot on my post-production skills in video. So what I do in my practice is I hire people who do that, and they're really good at that. So I have a drone guy who's absolutely amazing. Oh my gosh, this guy, he's incredible. Like he's, I don't know what the word is, but they kind of do, he goes out and flies these buildings that it's freestyle drone photography. Anyways, he's absolutely brilliant. And he can fly, he's so good, and he has such a small drone that he can fly interiors for me. So he's so good. He's so good. So I have that guy. I have somebody else that he does that as well. His name's Colin. He does interiors and exteriors. I have somebody who's a great videographer. I have a measurement specialist who's a 20-year pro. She does commercial drafting when she comes out and does measurements for me. Amazing. I have a designer that I can access if somebody needs help with a design. This person that I use is she's more commercial design than she is residential, but all the same. So I do what I say to people. I hire people I contract with people who do what they do really, really well, because I'd rather offload that to somebody who's qualified than take it on myself and provide a substandard product.
I have a question, and please forgive me if this is out of line for me to ask, but I know that most of the listeners and people that are going to be watching this are real estate investors. So in most cases, anytime I've ever sold a property, my realtor's always just had a photographer. It's always been kind of taken care of. I'm not the one looking for a photographer. Yeah. It's just almost expected. But for most of the investors that are watching, I think that a lot of people are genuinely curious about, should I get professional photos done for my rental properties?
Yes.
As an expense. Do you mind sharing roughly ballpark how much someone can expect to get good professional photos done for each of their properties?
Yeah, I don't mind sharing it all. And it's all on my website too, if anybody's interested what I charge out. But I do by square footage, because I know how long it takes me to do certain square footages. So if I'm in a condo that's sort of up to 1,000 square feet, one floor, I charge a certain price for that. If I've got a townhouse that's a couple of levels or 3 levels, I charge a certain price for that. And then I charge another price for single family. So single families, generally you're looking at about 2,500 square feet over the 3 levels of a fully complete home like that. And then, it goes up. So the place that I did a place out in Pritis. The realtor's like, oh, it's just a little place out in Pritis. It was a McKinley Masters home. It was absolutely huge. It was 7,000 square feet. And I know that's going to take me 4 hours to shoot. Right. So, and that's out of town. So I do charge from the city limits out. I charge whatever the CRA rates are per miles. So for me, if you're looking at 1,000 square foot condo, for instance, you're looking at $175 in GST. Here's where another place that I'm kind of different than other people. When I do that, I create a gallery for the homeowner, and that's a it's a pretty gallery. It's not like MLS. MLS is very industrial. This gallery is pretty. It can you can see things in there via slideshow. You can send it. There's a little share button so people can send things out. I do a social media push for a lot of my listings. Just because I'm kind of nerdy that way. I like to kind of do stuff on social media, and then I provide that ad tile. I make a little ad tile and I provide that to my realtor. And I kind of, when I make the ad tile, I put on the bottom of it who it is that's listing that, and then there's a header on the top. Like I did one that said mid-century modern, and then to view and purchase. And I always say to view and purchase this property. Yeah. Because I want people to, continue on with to view, but you're also going to buy it. So it says to view and purchase. So I'm a little different. They get a little bit of extra push.
I think that's totally worth it. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to spend the money, but at the same time, just consider it to be part of your closing costs. Yeah. If you buy a rental property, you're going to pay. You're going to pay for inspection. You're going to pay for your legal. You're going to pay for, this and that and everything else. Just add in $200 to get professional photos done once. You only need to get them done once. Yeah. Right. And then you can use those photos for the next 10 years. Yeah. Every time you have a vacancy, I think it's totally worth it.
For the most part, we often will build in a bit of a license fee. So there's a reason we do that too. I don't necessarily encourage people to use the same photos for 10 years. Lots of things change. Your paint changes. You may have a furnished or partially furnished. So, I don't want those things to go stale on them. So I don't encourage people to use them beyond 3 years. I think, come on, you're going to, you may not own it anymore, but yeah, you're right. It's a cost, and you build it into, your group of costs. And again, at the end of the year, it doesn't matter if it's $89 or if it's whatever I charge, you're still going to write that off, and you're still going to get that back, in whatever capacity you get it back, vis-a-vis your own taxation structure. So I am acutely aware that people are putting out a lot of money on the front end. I am aware of that, which really drives my commitment to providing them a quality product. Sorry, I don't mean to rag on these $89 guys, because a lot of these guys, especially during the pandemic, there were people, well, I mean, a lot of them are, they mean well. That's not the question,
right.
but they may not have, developed their craft yet. But if you're spending $89 on a crappy product, what have you got? Whereas if you're spending whatever I charge you, I guarantee you're going to have a beautiful end product. So.
Well, when people are thinking about this, it's if you're a landlord, or if you're looking to sell, I mean, I don't think there is a landlord or a seller of any sort who isn't saying to themselves, all right, so it's time to sell, it's time to rent again. Everyone is saying to themselves, okay, I got to make my place look as good as it possibly can, because that will attract the best tenant and attract the most buyers. I mean, that's what they have to be saying to themselves. And so as landlords and investors, we also have to say to ourselves, and we have no idea really what we're doing. It's just kind of seat of the pants stuff that we don't do normally. We don't really know. And if they'll just extend that out to the photography side of things, then they go, and I really know nothing about how to properly photograph and set up a place for its best effect. I mean, we just don't. So that's another way of looking at spending the money. I mean, you don't know what you're doing, folks.
I'm sorry if you're looking to the left here. I'm just looking at this little video I have. There's a lot of things that go into making a really great photo that you won't notice if you don't know what you're looking for, but you will notice if things are in that image that are distracting. So I'm very careful what's in my image. I don't so if you're seeing this image behind me here, and it's a little cropped, but I tend to, frame my image so that the edges of the image will follow a door frame, or they'll follow cupboards, and there's nothing sticking in there. So you'll see images a lot where there's just the corner of the armchair sticking in, or there's half of a photograph on the wall, or there's, the drain, not the drain, but the faucet is halfway in. That drives me crazy, because the first thing that happens is your eye goes to the incongruous thing in that image. So
spoils it all.
You can get, yes, you can get cheap images, and yes, people will be able to see what you have for sale or for lease or for rent. But are they going to be distracted by the quality of that image and what's poking in there? Or are they going to have this overall impression of, I have to see that place? And that drives my work, that people see that, I have to see that place.
Well, let's look at your video that I know I'm dying to see. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to be looking at here.
Okay, I'm a terrible person, I'll tell you that right now. So
we figured that out.
I often will go on MLS, and I'm really careful with these images. I pick not from Calgary, because people know me and I know them, and I don't want to expose somebody to ridicule. So I go elsewhere and find terrible images. Like, I'll often go to Regina or something.
Are they?
No, I go to I'll go to somewhere else, and sorry, this is also a terrible thing, but it's a reality. If I'm looking at MLS in a small center, like a small place in Saskatchewan, it's unlikely that they have, a super qualified photographer. So I'll just go and pick these images. Sorry, I'm going to see if I can share this screen here. 2 seconds. I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to share this screen right here. And you guys can let me know if you can see this.
Yes.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, let me get back to the beginning. All right, and I'm going to stop this in the middle just so that I can talk about a little bit about some of these images here. Okay. So this image here is somebody's rental property. And the reason this photo drives me crazy is that it's skewed, drives me nuts. Yeah. And nobody wants to buy those dirty dishes or those creepy scouring pads. So if I'm shooting this image, I'm getting rid of those dishes. And if all that means is I'm walking in there and pulling those over onto another counter, fine. Yeah. It takes me 30 seconds. I don't care. And the rest of that stuff, I'm going to put it in the sink, or I'm going to put it underneath. And then I'm going to make sure that image is straight.
Yeah.
'Cause
And then it
that
wouldn't be
drives-
bad, would it? Wouldn't be too
No,
bad.
because it's a
Present
nice
that.
little kitchen, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the other thing that happens here is because those dishes are on the counter one and they're dark, that's the first place your eye goes. So the first thing you're thinking is, oh,
It
gross.
did. Yeah, it did go. My eye did go right there.
This is a hotel.
Ew.
Do you
You can
want
almost
that?
kind of see right into the toilet.
Yeah. What are you doing when you're looking at that toilet that way? You're being sick. That's a night out, and you're drunk, and now you're gonna. This is not how I want to see this hotel room. And the
No.
color's off, and you can see it's called barrel distortion, so you can see around the edges of that shower that it's very round. So
Yeah.
they've used a really very, very wide lens. It's probably an 11 millimeter lens, and that's what gives what's called barrel distortion. But most people I know, when they see that view of that toilet, that's what's going on. I don't want
Yeah.
that in my image.
No, that would not work.
It's okay. I'm sorry, if your photographer is too lazy to go get that laundry out of that shot,
Yeah. Look at that.
like
Those are the lost socks. They didn't have any. They were all unmatched socks. There was
terrible.
like 5 unmatched socks.
Yeah. And in this image here, we've got, whoever this person is shooting, I'm assuming that's the realtor. So, and this is the thing. Somebody who's not a photographer isn't necessarily going to notice this detail.
No.
And then they've shot it, and then they've got to put it up because they're often under time crunch.
Yeah.
And they don't maybe know how to or have access to an editing program. So they don't know how to fix this image so it looks nice and get rid of themselves.
Can you tell me about all these different lines and what
Yeah.
they represent?
I've put these lines in here just to illustrate how skewed this image is. So
Okay.
That's all. And this image here, I don't think I have a copy of it, but I'll often fix these images as much as I can. So, I've brought this image into my editing program, straightened it up, got rid of the shadow of whoever shot that, just to show the difference between, a well-composed. Again, I can't say this often enough. If your photographer doesn't have the time to put that toilet seat down, what else are they missing? Because have they not noticed it, or are they just not going to bother? So
Of
this image,
all the things you should be getting rid of, it's
I
toilet.
didn't notice the socks in the microwave.
So again, like this may be somebody
That's
who's
good.
newish, and they haven't had, they weren't paying attention. That happens to me occasionally, and sometimes it's unavoidable that I can see myself in other clients, but I know how to fix that in post-production. So you're never going to see that in my images. I will fix that.
Gotcha.
And then this little chair that's sitting back here, that's a question of somebody moving their body and their camera so that chair is not sticking out. And then this here is super distracting because why do you need that? So I think I have a copy of this that I edited afterwards. Okay, so this is the clean image here. And I've just, I've fixed that. I couldn't move that chair, unfortunately. But, this television that's up on the wall here is going with the person who's selling or moving out. So it doesn't need to be an image anyway.
Much better. Much better.
I have a feeling that after this session, I'm going to be so incredibly critical of all my pictures going forward.
That's
You're creating a monster now.
Oh, good. I like monsters. Okay, I'm all for art. All for art. This art, no bueno. Do not leave this art on your wall. There are, sometimes you can go into a home and say to the homeowner, I want you to take that down. That could be very precious to them. Fine. But if that was my image, I would have gone into Photoshop and I would have replaced that image with something that I'd shot, like a landscape that I shot. But that is cool. I love that. I think that's a beautiful, sort of 1950s image, but that's offensive to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens? You've got somebody who's a person of a certain age or a certain persuasion who is immediately rejecting that realtor or that landlord because they're offended by that image. And then the other thing that I really dislike about this image is this open space behind that dresser there.
Oh.
That's me. I don't like those open spaces. It's like, what's behind there? That creeps me out.
So you tuck that in and make sure that wasn't exposed.
I would just move me, so that,
Yeah, I guess so. A different angle does it.
And then this is just a whole bunch of clutter. Like, again, this is where I will send that to you, Donna, if you're listening. I'm going to send you that document. I send out something to the homeowner to say, hey, this is the best thing. Take everything off the counter that you don't need on the counter, especially if they're moving. I'll often say to people, hey, anything that you don't use on the daily, that you can put in a box, you're saving yourself the aggro down the road when the house does sell, that half your stuff is already packed. So,
Yeah.
This stuff on the right-hand side here, why is that there? Like, what does that add? This needs to come off. This is really messy. I don't leave towels on the stove.
Yeah.
They're not matched, and they just pull your focus. This stuff could have been put away. That's going with the homeowner, the mat in front of the sink. This, I would have just, got rid of all this stuff. And I'll do that. If somebody is in a situation that they haven't had a chance, or they've got little kids running around, as long as they say yes to me, I'll go in there and I'll stage that up. And it takes me 5 minutes to do it. It's worthwhile.
Yeah.
But you'll keep the lobster above the window?
No. Well, I can't reach it. So
as long as it's not one of those fish that talk when you press
Yeah.
the button and sings the Marley.
Yeah. And the other thing that I will take out of photographs is religious iconery. And for no other reason than when people look at those images, I don't want a potential buyer to be distracted by anything in that image. So, a lot of the homes that I shoot a lot in the Northeast, and a lot of people have big images of Haile Selassie. It's super cool. I'm fascinated by that whole thing, but they're selling that home. That's going with them. It's not germane to the image. So this one here, this jumble of colors really bugs me. So if I had shot this, I would have taken away the small handheld here and the pink one on the counter, because the teal is really nice. That sets off that room really well, but it's a contrast that's jarring. And I would have shut the toilet, and then I will often clone out the toilet paper. So you wouldn't, that's there. And when the viewer comes into the home, they'll see that. But in my image, they don't see that, because I don't want a seller or a buyer or somebody who's going to rent this place to see an open toilet and toilet paper. Where's your mind going? Like, do you really want to think about oh, you don't want to think about whose butt's been there before.
No, definitely not.
I think it's me. I don't like it. I just think it's creepy, and maybe they don't think about it, but I don't want them to think about it, so I just take it out.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Nick Nolte doesn't need to be on your telly, so I turn televisions off, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
It's because that's super distracting, in a still image. Oh, here's this one with this fella playing I think that's
That's not real.
That is real.
I can't really see that. It's a bit small on my screen. What are we looking at?
It's a small image.
He's playing the trumpet for her.
Yeah, just on the right-hand side, there's a fella playing a trumpet.
Oh, right. Okay.
So another thing that I would do with this image, so this room is how they live for sure, but when I go in and shoot this, I'm taking this chair and this stool out of that photograph, because that door is important. This is going with whoever's leaving. So, people often say to me, oh, well, it doesn't look like you did in the photographs. And I just go, you are here. That's all that matters to me, is you came in the door.
Yeah.
Here's our friend, the photographer, sitting in the image in the shower.
There he is. Yeah.
So you can do two things. You can back off, and it's possible he's right up against a wall. Totally possible. So in that situation, I will often open the shower doors so that they're on an angle, because as soon as they're on an angle, I'm not reflected in those anymore.
Right.
And then all the stuff that's inside the shower, I take it out, because, that's not, sorry, I'm opening up that sidebar there.
It's a pretty intense shower.
Yeah. So again, why is that toilet seat open? Like, already this is an old downstairs loo.
Yeah. Crowded.
It's not, it just, and the angle is really wonky. I don't love that. I don't even know why they shot this. Like, what is this? And
That's a stairway to nowhere.
Yeah. And the first place your eye goes is to this Disney character over here. So we're selling homes to adults.
Yeah.
And so a Disney character is, it's cute and everything, but I don't think a 6-year-old's buying this house.
No.
So those kinds of things are important to, and this one with the cat litter, like, that's on MLS. Come on. And not only is it cat litter, it's cat litter that's been used.
Yes.
Wow.
An unmade bed. Oh my God.
Yeah. So I don't mind this shot so much, except for a couple things. And let me just roll this back a little bit. So in this shot here, this bust is cool, I'm sure, but it's not cool in this image. And this corner of this chair is sticking out. None of those things are necessary for this image. It just distracts from the whole. So these are mine now, sorry, and I won't brag about them, but I'll just say how I'm lining things up. So if you can see that the edge of this photo lines up with the edge of that door, and then the other side lines up with the edges of the art that's on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, I look at these and I'm like, oh, you didn't do such and such. And
I'm immediately calmer as I start to look at these. Those other images, I didn't know it till I started to look at these. They were making me edgy.
Yeah. You know,
Lovely.
you know, you're kind of selling a dream, or you know, whether it's something for sale or something for rent, you're selling a bit of a dream to whoever is going to live there. Yeah. But the other thing that I am doing is I am trying to interpret that home in the way that the homeowner sees it in their head. Because you guys, I know for me, like if I photograph my house, I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to move a whole bunch of stuff. In my head, it's a really lovely, you know, everything's in its place. So that's, you know, part of the goal is to make sure the homeowner sees it as how they envision it in their mind.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, so that's the end of that. I'll stop sharing that and then I'll get that out of the way. I have tons of stuff on the internet. I have a site that I use called Shootproof, and it updates pretty regularly. I kind of replace things as I'm shooting new things. I get rid of the old stuff, and so it's pretty up to date. They don't adjust the staging when something is off touch or anything. Who understands really? Yeah. I know. No. Call me. I'll help you.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, Julie, it's been great having you on.
Thank you.
Has been illuminating, to say the least. Sorry, I had to say that. And so Donna put your website contact details in the chat. So folks, anybody who wants to get a real pro job done, you'll be able to contact Julie. Totally going to be money well spent if you haven't figured out that getting photography done by a pro to the level that was in the last images that Julie was showing us, then have another think about this, because I believe that your rental or your house that's for sale will have a huge better percentage of selling fast for the price you want when it presents like this. It stands to reason. You always get the best people you can to be on your team. Julie has the best people she can think of to be on her team. I didn't think you would have a team, but you have your own team of 5 or 6 people. So
yeah, I work with a bunch of contractors. I don't pay them; I hire them. So yeah. But yeah, they're great. Yeah,
that's good. But they're part of a team. So again, thank you very much for coming on and telling us about this. I've really enjoyed meeting you and doing this. So
thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm really glad to be connected to you guys. So
all right.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're done for the night. Anything else, Donna, that I need to be talking about? No. Thanks again, Julie, Wayne.
Thank you.
Great job as always.
Good
night, everybody.
Good night.
Have a great night.